Alright lads, today we are again looking at the CV90 TML. This is the highest tier premium currently available in the Swedish tech tree, and for most of the time it's been introduced, it sat at battle rating 9.0, where it had no real lineup. But with the addition of the Stridsvagn 105, as well as a few other vehicles at 8.3, which do allow you to pad out this battle rating, is this tank now a good grinder? Well, let's start with the basics. The CV90 105 TML is a rank 6 battle rating 9.0 light tank located in the Swedish tech tree. To unlock the tank, you're going to have to purchase it on the Gaijin store for the cost of €60 or dollars. But as well as a tank, you get 2,000 golden eagles and 15 days of premium time. Because the tank is a premium vehicle, you have a very low crew train cost of 10,000 silver lions. And for the expert and age qualifications, it's 1,210,000 silver lions and 2,100 golden eagles respectively. In terms of the mobility and survivability, the tank is powered by an engine producing 550 horsepower, combined with the vehicle's weight of 21.9 tons, gives the tank a pretty good power to weight ratio of 25.1 horsepower per ton. This is a pretty good power to weight ratio, but for a light tank it's a little under average. You have around the same level of mobility as the top tier main battle tanks, like the M1A2 Abrams and the T80. This is by no means bad, but what I'm trying to say is, you don't really have a mobility advantage over heavier tanks. So while this tank is a light tank, it has quite a low silhouette, it just doesn't have a mobility advantage on the battlefield. And it also doesn't have an advantage when it comes to survivability. As I've said a few times now, this tank is a very light tank to be honest. Being based on the CV90 chassis, it is basically an infantry fighting vehicle, so it's only really designed to stand up to heavy machine gun fire. Anyway, the tank has a crew of 4 men, with a driver in the hull, sat next to the engine, and a gunner, commander and loader located in the turret. The crew being packed in there like sardines doesn't do it any favours in terms of survivability. A single penetrating round is likely to one-shot the vehicle. While the front-mounted engine may do a little bit to protect some spalling, this certainly is no Macarthur. And again, you'll pretty much die in a single hit, so you want to try and use that mobility to some good effect. Stay fast, stay steaky, basic light tank playstyles. You don't want to be brawling in this tank, but that goes without saying. But anyway lads, on to the actual arm performance itself. And against this tank's own gun, at a range of 500 meters, the upper frontal plate provides 63mm of protection. Again, this won't even save you from 30mm autocannon fire, so you can only really depend on your armour protecting you from heavy machine gun fire. And it's not really much better for the turret. It's French, so as you'd expect, it's awful. Francophobia aside, the thickest part of the turret gives you around 71mm of protection. However, it is much thinner in the most average place of the turret, so as I said, any incoming round is likely to penetrate, and a tight concentration of your crew is likely going to result in a one-shot kill. We then come on to the gun. This is the 105mm CN105G2, again French, but surprisingly, it doesn't suck. The gun is fully stabilised in both the horizontal and vertical planes, and for a light tank, you can carry a surprisingly high amount of ammunition, 40 rounds in total, with 12 of those rounds being classed as first stage ammunition. The gun itself in game basically acts like a British Royal Ordnance L7, it has the same stock reload speed of 8.7 seconds, and when you sell your soul to Gaijin for an ace crew, that drops down to 6.7 seconds. So you basically have the exact same fire rate of most 105mm guns at your battle rating. The turret traverse rate is also pretty decent. With a stock crew, it's 20 degrees per second, and with an ace crew, that rises to 40 degrees per second. This isn't as good as the XM1 for example, but it is far better than some of the Soviet premiums. This basically allows you to get your turret rotated quickly and onto targets, allowing you to put that gun to work faster. But there are some negatives of this gun and turret, and that is the vertical guidance characteristics. While you do have the NATO standard 20 degrees of gun elevation, you have a rather average 7 degrees of gun depression. In game, this limits your ability to be sneaky, using ridgelines and hills to your advantage. Because you don't have the full 10 degrees of gun depression, you have to come up out of cover, exposing yourself to enemy fire in order to fire yourself. This isn't a massive issue, the tank is more than playable, but it would have been nice to have that full NATO standard 10 degrees of gun depression. The tank also has a laser rangefinder, as well as first generation thermal imaging for the gunner's sights. This is a big advantage because it allows you to identify plays at long range, and that laser rangefinder gives you an accurate laser target. At battle rating 9.0 though, these features aren't particularly rare anymore. They used to be a long time ago, but with so many premiums added to the game at top tier, thermal imaging just isn't a selling point anymore. I remember when everybody thought that the Leopard L44 was overpowered because it was the only tank to get thermal imaging in the German territory for a while. That was back before the KA-50 though. Those days are long gone. Anyway, the ammunition. Remember, this is a premium tank, so you don't have to grind out any sort of ammunition. Our first shell is the DM12 Heater Fest round. It travels at 1173 meters per second and contains 1.27 kilos of TNT. It of course uses a shaped charge warhead, meaning its penetration is not linked to its muzzle velocity. The DM12 can penetrate 400mm of armour at all ranges. This round is still pretty useful. At battle rating 9.0, you don't really have the massive swarms of composite armour like you do at higher tiers. So while this probably isn't the best round available to this tank, it certainly is still usable. A round that is kind of dead on arrival is the DM502 Hesh round. It travels much slower and only penetrates 127mm of armour at all ranges and angles. We also have two APF SDS rounds. First, we have the M735. This travels at 1501 meters per second, and at a range of 500 meters, can penetrate 342mm of armour. Again, at battle rating 9.0, this isn't particularly impressive. It's basically the first APF SDS round that most American tanks use. I guess Sweden imported it as well. But finally, we have the DM23 round. This travels slightly slower at 1455 meters per second, but actually penetrates less armour. At 500 meters, it's only capable of penetrating 330mm of armour. The catch here is that DM23 produces more internal spalling when it penetrates, due to the round being slightly heavier. While you have a negligible difference in penetration, you get a pretty big boost to post-penetration damage. So even though the DM12 has slightly less penetration, it is far better at actually killing vehicles, because it creates much more internal spalling when around impacts. And that's pretty much it for the firepower. So, should you buy this tank? Well, you certainly aren't getting as much value for money as you would be getting with some other premiums in game. The T72AV terms is by far a better premium in terms of standard for money. You get a lot more bang for your buck, but the CV90-105 is still a good tank, but I don't really think it's worth $60. Even though it's one of the newer premiums added to War Thunder, it's kind of fallen behind if you know what I'm saying. Especially at battle rating 9.0, which now sees up tiers to 9.7 and 10.0 very frequently. Despite having some good results with this vehicle, I feel like it is a little bit over tiered to be honest. It could easily go down to battle rating 8.7 or even 8.3 to be honest. I'd take a T55 AM over a CV90-105 any day of the week. I don't really see why it's at battle rating 9.0 at all. But anyway lads, I wouldn't recommend buying this unless you really want to grind out the Swedish tech tree. You're not missing out by not having it. It's by far very over tiered I think, and whilst it is fun to play, it doesn't really offer anything unique to be honest. It's basically a Leopard 1A5 on a CV90 hull. Kind of. Anyway, if you enjoyed the review, please do consider leaving a like and subscribing. And if you really liked it, please do consider becoming a channel member, like Tomato Salad, Doboa LX, Just Someone, Destroyer 1805, Dr. Bob, Tans, William Tessier, and Lola Alfonso. Thanks again for watching the video lads, and I'll see you in the next review.